Episode 14. Cultivation Technique. It wasn't easy for Xavier to arrange everything properly with Alan and send him away. Only then did he realize that the sun was already setting in the west, soon to be dark. He shook his head. Looks like I only have 5 students. Today was the last day to recruit students, and judging from the current time, it was probably the end of the recruitment. Initially, he thought that he wouldn't be able to recruit any students, let alone 5. For a teacher who scored the worst in the teacher qualification examination, it wasn't a bad result. Closing the doors to the classroom, Xavier followed the path back to his room. As a teacher of the academy, he had a dormitory room of his own. However, it was a small room, only about 30 square feet. Once he reached the dormitory, he pushed the door open. Looking inside, he couldn't help but sigh. Not only was the room small, but mold was also growing on the bedding from the humidity. He had no idea how his old self was able to survive in such an environment. I can't focus on my room right now, he thought. Lessons are going to start tomorrow, so I have to first perfect my level of cultivation and try training a bit. Xavier followed the method he pulled from his memories and sat with his legs crossed on the bed. As a transcender, although he had inherited the memories of his old self and wasn't new to cultivating, he was still quite excited at the thought of growing stronger. After he was done with the recruitment, it was time for him to solidify his cultivation. No matter what, in this world, strength reigned supreme. The Library of Heaven's Path was capable of identifying others' gates of power and flaws, allowing him to easily break through the defenses of opponents of the same level. However, if this enemy was much stronger than he, even if he could identify the gaps in their attacks, he was unable to keep up with them speed-wise. Before he could injure his opponent, he might have already been severed into multiple pieces. Even though the Library of Heaven's Path was formidable, it didn't ensure his invincibility. If he wanted to become stronger, cultivation was the way to go. He recalled the skill he had memorized. The cultivation technique of my former self was called the Anglewood 9-level formula. It is a skill created by the founder of Anglewood Academy. The skill consists of 9 levels, with each level corresponding to the cultivation realm of the cultivator. There were 9 levels to a cultivator, and every level opened up a new realm. The higher one climbed, the harder it was to cultivate. Right now, I am the weakest of all the teachers in the academy. In the academy, almost all teachers had reached fighter level 4, leaving him as the sole remaining level 3. Thus, he had to train harder to catch up to them. He focused his concentration. In an instant, countless bright particles appeared before him as he slowly inhaled and exhaled while absorbing them. Gradually, the gleam within his aura enriched. After cultivating for a while, Xavier opened his eyes and shook his head. This is way too slow. Even though he had inherited the memories of his old self, his consciousness still had remained that of an earthling. He found it difficult to sit still to cultivate for long periods of time. Especially upon viewing the process of the gathering of gleam, he felt even more helpless. Gathering gleam referred to the action of pulling and gathering the spirit particles in the air and pressing them together. Just like the stacking of logs, they would accumulate to form a river. This was an extremely huge project. There were some cultivators who persisted in it every day without fail, filling their auras with 3 years to break into higher realms. It was a work that required accumulation over time. To cultivate in such a boring way for multiple years, well, you just might as well have killed him. He then had a thought. Oh, that's right. Although the Englewood 9-level formula is the most popular cultivation technique in the Academy, it isn't the strongest one. I can use the Library of Heaven's Path to seek out its flaws and find a way to correct them. Once I correct the flaws, my training should be more efficient. There were different tiers to cultivation techniques as well. Better cultivation techniques allowed one to cultivate faster, while the weaker ones caused one to cultivate at a slower pace. Could it be that the better cultivation technique had fewer flaws? Other people might have been unable to improve their cultivation technique, but Xavier was different. With the Library of Heaven's Path in hand, he could seek out the flaws in his technique to correct them. If he were to create a cultivation technique wherein even the Library of Heaven's Path couldn't find a flaw, wouldn't his cultivation speed soar significantly? At this point, Xavier stood up, placed the Englewood 9-level formula in his palm, and started flipping through it. Just as he expected, the library in his mind jolted, and a book with the exact same name appeared. Opening the book gently, he realized that there were countless flaws listed on the Englewood 9-level formula, numbering more than 1,000. This is the skill I was training with a moment ago? Xavier was shocked. Xavier was amazed that his cultivation hadn't simply disappeared from training in this skill. What about other cultivation techniques? He asked himself. As a teacher, there were quite a few books in his room. Supreme 4 Inscription, Heaven Meridian Technique, Lotus Acupoint Breakthrough Might. As he casually flipped through each of them, the library automatically compiled a corresponding book that recorded all kinds of flaws in the skill. For these skills, the flaws that were recorded exceeded 3,000. It was even more alarming than the Englewood 9-level formula. Xavier felt like he was about to go crazy out of frustration. Won't I die from exhaustion while searching for a way to correct all of those? It was hard to find a correct path when there were more than 1,000 flaws in a secret manual. It was like having 1,000 different paths before you, with each having countless differences. Even if the Library of Heaven's Path could ascertain whether the path was right or not, finding the most accurate path would end up tiring him to death. Right now, my cultivation is at Fighter Level 3 Gleam Pinnacle, just a little bit away from breaking through. Right now, I only have to find the flaw in the secret manual regarding this aspect and correct it. Upon seeing the countless mistakes in the Englewood 9-level formula, he knew that it would be impossible for him to resolve them in a short period of time. Thus, he flipped the manual to the last page. Although difficult to train in the Fighter Level 3, the last step to breaking through was significantly easier. As he expected, there were only 10 flaws on this page. Error in the method of sensing the spirit in the air, error in manipulating the flow of spirit particles, error in guiding the gathered spirit to flow through the forming meridian. The 10 flaws that were written here were clearly detailed. The Library of Heaven's Path only recorded flaws. It didn't list methods to resolve them. As a result, it wasn't easy to search for the correct path to take. Right. It seems that the parts of the Fighter Level 3 breakthrough method in the other books have different flaws from this. A thought flashed through his mind as he recalled what was written in the other secret manuals. He flipped through the other books to find the chapter about breaking through the Gleam Realm. It was exactly how he remembered. Although there were mistakes in those as well, their errors were in different aspects. If it isn't marked as an error, then it should be correct. Xavier's eyes lit up. He immediately grabbed a pen and paper to jot down the correct portion of each of them. Soon, a new cultivation method appeared before him. Now, let's see if there are errors in this. With a faint smile, he grabbed the book that he had just written. The Library of Heaven's Path jolted once more. a similar book appeared. However, this time, there was only one error in it. After researching for a moment longer, he corrected this final error and used the Library of Heaven's Path to ascertain once again. Finally, all the errors had been resolved, resulting in the book's perfect form. This is the most precise method to break through the Fighter Level 3 realm. Let me give it a try. Looking at the contents he wrote himself, Xavier nodded his head excitedly. He hurriedly got into position and started to cultivate. Relax my body and allow my pores to open, as though I am sinking into a tub of spirit air. Every single pore of mine is a complete life form by itself, breathing by its own will. Zzz. Although he wasn't very used to cultivating through this method, it didn't take long for him to feel the surrounding spirit surge into him. While the spirit absorbed by a single pore wasn't much, when all of the pores of a body undergo the same process concurrently, the absorption speed was one to behold. The spirit in the air gathered like a flowing river, forming a giant flood in his body, rushing towards his aura. Boom! An explosion echoed from his spirit sea. Initially, he was just a step away from breaking through this bottleneck. Gleam overflowed from his aura and coursed through his entire body, enriching his muscles and bones. He felt a fresh sensation. Fighter Level 4, Speed Realm. This is too fast. Xavier's eyes widened. Based on what was recorded in the Englewood 9-level formula, he would need to take at least 3 to 5 months to break through, and even then would still require a certain amount of luck. After slightly modifying the skill to correct the flaws, how long did he take in comparison? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Realistically, he didn't even take 3 minutes to successfully achieve a breakthrough. Furthermore, despite only correcting the breakthrough method for Fighter Level 3 Pinnacle, the purity of the gleam he absorbed was incomparably pure, containing much more power than the ones he had cultivated in the past. If the gleam he had cultivated in the past was sloppy mud, then this wave was clear spring water. There were also different tiers to gleam: superior, intermediate, and inferior. The higher the quality, the clearer it was, and the further one would be able to climb in the future. In the past, the gleam he cultivated was murky and of inferior quality. The ones he was cultivating were so clear that you could see through them. More than likely, it was a gleam of superior quality. Didn't they say that if one wants to cultivate superior gleam, they would require a cultivation technique sent from God? There were different tiers to a cultivation technique as well. Namely, God, Saint, Spirit, Phantom, and Mortal. In each tier, they were classified further into Inferior, Intermediate, Superior, and Pinnacle. Englewood 9-level formula was the lowest mortal cultivation technique. So how could it cultivate gleam of such quality? It must be the Library of Heaven's Path! Xavier clenched his fist. He was still cultivating the Englewood 9-level formula, but as he managed to avoid the mistakes recorded on it and followed the correct path upwards, he was able to gather superior gleam. It seemed that what was recorded on the Library of Heaven's Path was accurate. The Englewood 9-level formula was indeed far from perfection. If so, with the help of the Library of Heaven's Path, could it be possible for me to create a book of godly cultivation technique? Xavier's eyes twinkled.